host, Paul Catalina.
So, Pierre, I do wish you were here with us sometimes because you could hear our off-air discussions. And my wife asked me randomly last night of Garrett, Jack, and Emery, the guys who are here, who my favorite is. And I know you've never met any of these guys.
Right,
but she like, girls think of it like it's funny how, like, girls have to, like, tear off their best friends but never tell them what tier they're in. Mm-hmm. Pierre, you and I know exactly what tier we're on. It doesn't need to be spoken, and we're good. Like, you know, like, outside of just one of us flat out insulting one another, like, with intent to harm, like, there's nothing that could change where we are. Like, we've been close for a long time, but we don't need to put kind of a label on it, like an airplane. Like, oh, well, you know, but girls will have, well, Deidre, she's in coach. She's a friend. I want her on the trip, but she's not sitting in first class, you know?
Right.
Like that's the kind of thing. It comes this way because of bridesmaids. Because if a girl says, I will have 20 bridesmaids, and then she has to figure out which order they walk in, you know, based on how close they are to her. And 20's way too many, but I'm just giving that. A dude will be like, 20 guys? No problem.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
I got it. You know, no big deal. And they're like, I thought you weren't even really that good of friends with Doug. And like, what? We talked 5 years ago. It was awesome. We had beers.
Yeah.
It's good. We don't have to talk every day. I don't know. What's the problem? Yeah, it's normal.
It's funny that you bring up the tiers that the women seem to have in terms of, like, this is one thing I'm probably going to teach my teenage son. I'll be like, son, if you want to have some real fun, scratch off a piece of paper and write a friends power ranking list and pretend like you're one of the girls in the class and just kind of leave it laying around.
Yeah.
And say it's like, oh, that's Emily. Just say, whose is this? Like, oh, that's Emily's power rankings friends list. And just walk out the classroom and watch a nuclear bomb just explode in the classroom and just smile as you walk out.
The movie is not called Mean Boys. It's called Mean Girls, right? No. Okay, that's not. Like, it's not called that. So she was like, so I was like, well, Avi, like, Emery's my favorite. And she's like, but you and Garrett are so close. I'm like, yeah, we are. She goes, would Garrett think? I was like, no,
it's Emery.
Emery's his favorite too. Like,
absolutely.
This is how we work here. It's fine. She's like, what about Jack? He's no one's favorite. He actively tries not to be. So he's happy in his own thing. Like, we don't need to tear it off. Like, if you really want to know, look, if I said that, Garrett's not going to go home to Anna, his wife, and be like, oh, I'm not Paul's favorite. He's going to be like, you know, Paul and I have the same favorite. It's Emery. That's another thing that Garrett and I have in common, thus enhancing our friendship.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah. You ever, like, you've probably seen those internet memes of the couple in the bed together with the man with his back turned to his wife, and his wife is like looking over her shoulder. And you've seen a bunch of different memes. Like, I bet you he's thinking about like other women, and he's like, what was Michael Jordan's career average in 1991? Like, you know, that kind of stuff. That's really, I love that one because it's like so true. That's like absolutely, it feels like it's absolutely real life, that meme.
Yeah. No, I mean, how many times has your girlfriend come to you and said, what are you thinking about? And you're like, I mean, honestly, not much.
Yeah.
You know, like I could, at any given point, you could say, hey, Paul, what's on your mind? I'm thinking about how I could make a sandwich of both like meatball and pepperoni, where I bite the meatball, the pepperoni doesn't slide with it. Yeah. Like that's the kind of engineering I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And then,
you constantly have like Shark Tank ideas in your mind. Cause like, I mean, you watch the show, sometimes you're like, God, why didn't I think of that? And you're starting to think like, how can I quit my job and make millions of dollars by preventing that piece of salami from there's got to be a device or something that I could prevent sliding from outside. Because the last thing I want to do when I'm eating a sandwich is see it fall apart. And now I've got mayo and mustard on like the sides of my pinky fingers. Who wants that?
Look, I would like, and will be part of my presidential platform, I will have NASA work on a French fry box that keeps them at the temperature they were put in at.
Yes.
So that when you go get fries, when you come home, they're still hot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm tired of being accused of not, like, you know, trying to help solve the world's problems.
Well, look, a French fry box that keeps fries hot, you know, for, let's just say 30 minutes before it drops, because that should give you an appropriate amount of time to get home.
Reasonable. If I were you, I would copyright that now. before somebody steals that
Now,
out there on the interwebs.
Now, granted, the best idea I've come up with is freezing the space-time continuum inside of a capsule and then putting the fries in that so they live in the perpetual state of where they were made. The problem is I think that technology could be dangerous in the wrong hands.
Fair. I still would like to see it, but fair, yes. Yeah.
I mean, just, by the way, this is the worst episode of Phineas and Ferb ever. But Pierre, you were at Big Ten Media Days.
Yes.
In Indianapolis. It's funny, my mother was there the week before at a very large Catholic convention. So if you found like any rosaries just sitting around, that was probably from that.
Okay, there you go. I could have handed her my crucifix right there that hangs above the door. So
yeah. So she was there at the big.
As a Catholic, I wasn't invited to this. Should I be concerned?
I don't know. Believe me, she invited me.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
she invited me. But we have talks about how my level of Catholicism has waned over the years.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows.
Yes,
yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. Like it depends on what's in the news cycle. To be quite honest with you,
I think that's fair. Yeah,
I haven't stopped believing what I believe. I'm just not trustworthy of the people who tell me that. A lot of the time. That's where I am. But you were there, Big Ten Media Days, and I'm curious as to, because they always roll these things out. The ACC had this really stupid thing of like, we have the best non-conference schedule in the country, and you're like, well, good for you, but what about that's only a small portion of your games. Right. That's 33% of your games. What about the other 67% that are in conference? What is the Big Ten with their now 18 teams? What's their swagger like from your perspective?
I think the impression that I got is this is going to take a little bit of getting used to, much like the new kickoff rule in the NFL, which is not new to me as a former XFL viewer. But the overall feeling is like, yeah, this is going to get a little bit of taking used to. I know that there was conversations in regard to the revenue sharing ideas that will be kicked down the road that are going to be discussed later in the future, not in the immediate future right now anyway. But, that's the impression that I got. Dan Lanning and Oregon, I think, strike me as a team and a program, and for good reason, that doesn't care what conference they're in. They feel that they can come in and whoop your butt, and they don't care who knows it, and they're happy to let you know about it. So I'm the bravado of Oregon, if you will, resonated with me a little bit. I was like, okay, you're the new kid in the conference, but evidently you don't care about being liked, and that's fine. I don't care about that either. We're not out here to make friends. We're out here to win football games. So that's the kind of what everybody is kind of, it all has a feeling of new and fresh, and we've got these Pac-12 teams that are coming in. It is going to look weird, especially on the basketball court when you see Big Ten across the hardwood at UCLA. But that's kind of the impression that I get. But I mean, Oregon was a team that I kind of leaned back, had a little bit of a wry smile. I was like, okay, all right. I can get with this. It's a little bold. It's probably a little bolder than I would be, but I get it. I get it.
Oregon, I think this is Oregon or Ohio State's conference to lose.
No
right
question.
Now.
No question.
I do think that Michigan is going to hang around a lot longer, and we need to get into that in just a second because obviously new revelations there in the draft of the letter, which I wonder, okay, if that's just the draft of the letter coming out, what are they going to shave off to make it really flow? But Michigan will hang around, although now some of that to me is a little bit called into question, depending on how long they deal with this NCAA thing that's going to hang over their heads. Second, Penn State will hang around. I don't know about USC. I just don't. I think they're probably a top 20 team at their peak, but maybe not a team that's going to really contend for the playoff. And then after that, I think there's a whole lot of unknown. Like, what is Wisconsin? What is Nebraska this year? What is Iowa now that Iowa doesn't just get to play Minnesota and teams that play like them when they have to play in Oregon or in Ohio State in back-to-back. I don't know if it's back-to-back weeks, but they're going to have to play teams like that. Washington who will not be as good as they were last year, but I think they'll still probably be a tough out. And then UCLA, who probably has, even though they're in a new coach and they've been kind of up and down, probably can match them athlete for athlete at Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I know that Minnesota here in Minnesota, I cover the Gophers. I mean, they've got a stretch where they have to play. They have Iowa, Michigan, USC, UCLA, and then they have Penn State toward the end of the year before Wisconsin. So what you asked me, kind of like what kind of strikes me with this conference, I think the answer to this is probably, but my question is like, is there a middle class of this conference? I don't think there is a middle class of this conference, in my opinion, because I know you're probably going to throw your Iowas and your Wisconsins in there with the addition of these four. They're probably your middle class kind of schools. But I mean, when you're looking at the Minnesotas, the Purdues, the Illinois, I'm thinking to myself, how in the world are these teams going to be able to compete now? How? In the world of NIL, PJ Fleck talks to me about this all the time. He understands the magnitude that faces his program in terms of now competing in it. It's almost feeling, I don't want to describe it this way, but it almost feels like running a mom and pop shop in the world of corporations. Mm-hmm. And how are you going to be able to get people to realize, hell, Minneapolis is the 15th largest demographic in America. There's plenty of Fortune 500 companies here. And yet they have a hard time trying to find donors and trying to find somebody that understands the gravity of the situation in terms of trying to keep them relevant in the college football landscape. And
part of their problem is that a ton of those people in Minneapolis in these gigantic corporations are not Gophers.
Correct.
They've been shipped in there because they work for these gigantic companies.
Best Buy, Target, all that. Yeah.
For people who don't know, like when I found it striking that, when you land at the airport in Minneapolis, they have instructions in Japanese. Because there's so many Japanese companies that are like their U.S. home is in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And so, well, I mean, if that's a Japanese company, well, unless one of them comes over and really falls in love with Gopher athletics, I mean, you're not getting money out of that. Memphis has been very fortunate now that FedEx has decided to step up and fund a lot of their athletic department, their NIL and everything that's going on, because Fred Smith, the CEO of FedEx, has an affection for Memphis. But he also didn't have that much of an affection until recently when he could put real money into it. So even then, like, you can have a company that's housed there, but if you don't have a relationship or it's not mutually beneficial to the city or something, well, I mean, what's going to happen? So yeah, he's swimming upstream maybe more than a lot of programs of that size. It's not like Minnesota's a little tiny athletic department.
That is not.
But you can feel that way compared to Ohio State, who's in your own conference, who as soon as all this stuff was legal, they just had to figure out how to funnel the money, and they did it wrong for a couple years. But now, if you look at that roster, I don't think they're having trouble finding the money to get these guys. Caleb Downs didn't come because he loves the weather.
Yeah. And I mean, Darius Taylor is going to be Minnesota's starting tailback, and he won Big Ten Freshman of the Week, I believe, 3 times last year. I mean, he is no doubt Minnesota's best player, at least on offense. And go in the offseason, everybody was very, very concerned that he was going to leave. And he's from Michigan. So we all thought at some point or another, if he gets the opportunity to go play for Michigan or Michigan State or what have you, he probably is going to take it. Somebody stepped up, Dinkytown athletes here. Somebody stepped up, and he's getting paid. He's coming back for another year. But therein lies the problem. It almost kicks the problem down the road. Another year. You're going to have the same problem again next year. And and you're not Michigan and you're not Ohio State, where the name and the brand of Michigan, Ohio State still has clout. I know that's a different world with NIL money now. That's really going to end up being the thing that talks. But Michigan and Ohio State are still the names that have clout. And if you're a guy like Darius Taylor, even though you're going to have a phenomenal season at Minnesota, be the number one guy at Minnesota, But if you want to go home and like if you get paid a little bit more over there, this is a year. These are year-to-year contracts. They're year-to-year contracts. And for those teams, Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, what have you, this is really the world that they are living in. And my heart goes out to them. It really does, because this is a very difficult situation to navigate.
All right, let's talk about Michigan for a second. And for a second, I mean more than that. Sherrod Moore, and they're looking at I don't have the column in front of me right now, but 58, or is it 85? 58 games that were scouted.
I believe it's 58.
Yeah, 58 games that were scouted. It was Connor Stallions in disguise on the Central Michigan sideline, and they made some changes to their staff a few days ago, kind of abruptly, which leads me to believe that Central Michigan knows exactly who did that. That may not be the case, but it makes sense if it is. Sherrod Moore deleted a trove of text messages between him and Stallions. Connor Stallions left his call sheets with a player and said, hey, bring them to here afterwards. He deleted hard drive. He took hard drives with him. He was housing it all at Michigan's facility before all this came down. And what I always wondered, and I understand that there are varying levels of this that people can make maybe more big of a deal of than how it was, but their record after he got hired was like 28-3 or something ridiculous like that. Yeah. So it's really hard to say that he had no effect on it. And it's there was all this plausible deniability. Like, look, they were trying to play look, he was just a valuable member of our staff. He was good at what he did, and we trusted him with the information. We don't know how he got it. Like, that's where I get mad of like, all right, like the Astros kind of did the same thing of like, well, a lot of people are doing it. And you're like, yeah, okay, we'll get to them next, but we're talking about you now. Mm-hmm. Just admit that you did it and be like, all right, you got me. All right, we're sorry we did it. We tried to gain another advantage. It happens. We'll take our medicine. But much like the Astros, Michigan liked to employ the tactic of, no, you're the asshole.
Right,
like,
yes.
No, it's you. You're the ones that like, it's your problem for asking. Like, no, this happened. We have questions. You can choose to answer them how you will, but don't be mad at us because all of a sudden this is out there. It's not fake. It's a real thing that happened. Please illuminate us on how it gets this far down the road.
Right.
And
and one thing that I think if everybody reads the article, one thing that I know the major takeaway for me is like, even if you're not in trouble with the federal or the state government, if you delete text messages and somebody really, really, really wants to find them, they still have a way of finding them with forensic evidence and all that stuff. Like it's just, you can't get away with anything. That's, again, I'm going to tell my child whenever he or she comes into this world, listen, you live in a world now where privacy is next to non-existent. It's all digital. You have a digital footprint. There are cameras everywhere, whether you like it or not. And you can't get away with anything. So to think that you have the audacity to think that you can get away with these things still baffles me to this day, knowing, and there's countless examples left and right of nobody gets away with something like this. No. Nobody. It's like, so the thought process is like, well, it's a kind of an interpretation of the rule. Maybe I misinterpreted the rule. You're in charge of a major D1 football program.
Yeah.
I think you know what the difference between right and wrong is. You can try to fudge a few words here and there, maybe, I guess, to try to fit your narrative. But at the end, you know what you're doing.
Yeah. And the other thing is everybody is doing it. Okay, that's something we need to investigate and maybe change some rules from is if this is more widespread. The point is everybody can get caught. You got caught. So I can't go to court and if I robbed a bank, my defense can't be like, there's so many bank robbers, guys. There's so many. Like what? Like There's so many. Like, no,
And I
no.
only stole
Like,
from a credit union, too.
yeah,
It's not that big of a deal.
When we caught you, we'll do the same thing when we catch them. It doesn't matter that you're caught. You just got caught before the other ones. So, me saying like so many people rob banks, dude. Like, what are you even on about this? Like, no, that's not an intellectually honest argument.
There, and you said it to the the attitude of it is like, how dare you make an example out of me? What?
Yeah.
Like, why what did I? It's not that big of a deal. What did I do? I mean, like, yeah, this happens far too often, and I'm starting to get more and more annoyed with every occurrence because it's like, this is not the incidents that happen to some of these coaches. Some of these administrative staffs across the country, they're big news. They make national news. I know they did not go under your nose, and I know that they're probably fresh in your mind. So when 2 years goes by and you think you can try to get away with something that, the other guy tried to do, please sit down to me and explain your thought process of why you think you would get away with it.
Yes. It's look, every creepy dude who sent a picture of his genitals to somebody. Yeah. Look, there's no going back from it. You did it. You knew you were going to get caught. And you knew that somebody was going to see it. And the fact that you even thought that anybody wanted to makes you weird in the first place. Correct. But yeah, like you can't just do something and then your excuse is so many people do it. It's not, they weren't caught. And look, even minor things. You've worked for a lot of offices, and I guarantee you've had at least a couple meetings where people are like, hey, guys, we really need to take it easy on the stationery. Please just, don't take a whole box of pens. Take 2 pens. We're drinking way too much coffee. Like, yes, we'll get you free soda, but please, like, don't have 12 sodas a day. Share with your coworkers kind of a thing. And then if you were the one caught, like, with the 12 Dr. Peppers, you going, well, Andy does it too. You'd be like, well, Pierre, we saw you. Like, we're talking to you. We'll talk to Andy. We're talking to you.
And they're doing this as I'm wearing the Dr. Pepper t-shirt that I have in my, closet. What? Like, me? What makes you think? Like,
we're all trying to figure out how this happened. Who did it?
Come on. Like, it's like, like Sylvester the cat with Tweety Bird's tail, like, in his mouth.
What are you talking about?
What?
No. That's why, again, and I get trying to defend yourself legally, but when you're caught, especially in sports, you gotta, you can argue with the ref for a minute.
Yeah.
I wasn't holding. And you're like, well, yeah, you were.
And the other thing too, Paul, that I think a lot of people forget about this, especially in the sports realm, the faster you are to contrition, I think the faster you are to get people's respect. It's like if you come out just right away, the more you try to, it's just like anything we were taught as children. The more you try to bury the lie and the more you try to throw dirt on it, it's just going to get worse. The faster you rip the Band-Aid off, the faster people are to forgive you. In my experience with some of these things, and even though I don't like to say it this way, the faster people are to kind of tend to forget about it too.
Yeah.
Like, so the news cycle moves fast. So
the Astros haven't shook it completely yet, even though they won a World Series afterwards. The Astros haven't shook it yet because of the way that they responded first. They made people mad, and it wasn't from the owner on down. There was no real contrition. It was, well, there's a lot of teams doing it, which there were several teams that got caught doing it. Maybe none as egregiously as banging on a trash can. Right. Just like Michigan, there's other teams that are stealing signs. We know that. But are you scamming your way onto, a sideline of one of your opponents and recording it with spy glasses? That's where it's like, all right, well, this is your trash can right here. And it's going to live with you forever because when you were caught going, look, we had these advantages, there's always, and the thing is to like, just to admit it and go like, look, there's always people trying to get an edge in sports. We felt we had this edge. We used it. We stepped over the line. We're sorry about it. We'll make people stop asking questions over like, well, Boston did it, New York does it, and every time that the Dodgers do this, like, okay, that's fine. Tell us what you know, but also, so do you. That doesn't mean that it's okay for you to do this thing. That's what I got from the vibe of Michigan last year was like, so many people do it, okay, and when they get caught doing similar things, then the same punishment should be adjudicated out to them.
You and I have had conversations about this multiple times, and the people that are watching probably don't know this about me, but you know this about me. If there is one thing that I will absolutely lose respect on people for is people who think they are bigger than the game. People who think they're bigger than the game, they're above the law, they're above the integrity of the game. Once you lose the integrity of the game, you have nothing. You have nothing. Whether you're a league, whether you're a coach, whether you're a player, once you lose the integrity of the league, or whether you lose your own integrity by acting like you are bigger than the game, I have lost all respect for you. I will absolutely do everything in my power to bury you as a member of the media. I absolutely will do it.
Yeah. I mean, bigger than the game, or the minute you treat someone like they're stupid.
Correct.
Like you go like, well, I mean, we're not stupid, man. Like, you're just going to make us ask more questions.
Right.
So ask your lawyer what you're allowed to say that, and treat us with respect.
And they're wasting your time by doing the song and dance of trying to like cover it up. And then that just wastes more time. And that just makes me all the more irritated, because if you waste my time for me as a reporter trying to have to continue to get through these things and waste my own time, I'm going to be pissed at you. I'm going to be pissed at you. I'll remain objective, but I will be pissed at you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Pierre, with the last few minutes of the show, have we caught up on our trash reality TV?
We didn't get a chance to do that last week. I'm not all the way caught up on Big Brother. I'm 2 or 3 episodes into Big this season, so I still have a few episodes to go.
I'm curious. You are a person, a keen observer of the human condition like myself.
Yes.
And it is honestly on most seasons an idiot aquarium. Like,
and this is my first go around in the show for people who are just tuning in. This is my first go around in the show.
So I think that's why I like watching it, because it is an idiot aquarium.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's some people that are really smart, and some people that are really athletic, and some people who are good socially, but you get to watch like all these terrible mistakes they make, or how, with nothing to do in the house, but play pool and hang out, and there's no books, there's no TV, there's nothing. They're just there in the house for a maximum of 3 months.
It's like a social experiment.
Yeah, it's a social experiment.
Yeah.
How people, I mean, you've already gotten to see there's a contestant on the show named Angela who is bat crap crazy.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I mean, sits alone in the room and talks to herself. Crazy.
You and I have constantly alluded to the fact that when we get on The Amazing Race, that we're gonna be a very dynamic team. But there's one earlier in the season of Big Brother 2. One of my weaknesses in these games is memory games. My short-term memory is awful. When they had the people spinning in a chair and trying to remember a color combination, I turn over to my girlfriend and the couch nope, I'm out. After 2 of them, I said, there's no way. I said, there is no way I can get past 3 of the colors that I can remember. After that, it's over. No chance.
I would have much rather had the other one that the people had to do.
Easily. I'll stick my head in the snakes and the scorpions or the tarantulas. I'll stick my head in that any day of the week in terms of trying to remember. Memory challenge? No way. Yeah. No chance.
I'd like to think I'm good at some of those, but they do a lot of them where the other thing will be is okay, which they'll show a picture and be what color hat was Don wearing? And you're like, oh crap. Yeah. But you have to, but I think they do if you know the show, people are going to.
I'm better with numbers. Yeah. I'm better with numbers than I am with colors and with words and stuff. So that's
okay. Yeah, so when we get to The Amazing Race and we have a puzzle we have to put together or something like that.
Yeah.
We're good there, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The one thing, when we get on The Amazing Race, Pierre, what we're going to have to really work out is there are some things that are either artsy craftsy, which is not me or you, and there are certain things that are you have to put together a motorcycle, also not me or you.
Yes.
So that's where we have to be really careful about that. where when we pick those things, I don't know. Like this is.
I remember, and like you have, that's the thing, because you, there's only a certain number that you can do per each person. Like not one person can do all of the challenges. Like you have to kind of, trade off. I do remember that. Yeah. The motorcycle one, putting a skateboard together was another one.
That looked easy. And then it was like, because they're like, how many pieces are there to a skateboard?
Yeah.
There's like 40.
Yeah, right. And I'm watching some of these things. I'm like, I think about it all the time. It's like, if I was on the show, you put yourself in that position, I was like, oh, this is where I leave. This is where I bow out of the race. 100%. There is no way I'm putting this together. Absolutely not.
But my favorite ones were like, they have one that's clearly easier and then one that's so hard. And the people like, well, nobody's doing this one. We're like, yeah, dumbass. It's really hard. They have to walk in like just in a circle around this marketplace and look for the stickers of the Amazing Race and take the thing you asked the guy for. Like, hey, Amazing Race. And he's like, yeah, here's your duck. And then you go. As opposed to you have to find the correct color-coded balloons in this big wall of balloons. And, you're the only ones over there doing it and everybody else is done. No. Well,
these reality shows are not for the faint of heart. I can tell you that. You think you can do it. You're on the couch at home. You think you can do it. Then when you get in the game and the pressure's on, you find out what you're made of here.
Okay. I speak enough Spanish to get us by in Latin American countries or in countries that speak Spanish.
Okay.
Spain.
Yes.
I could probably, by the time we get on, learn enough Italian and French to get us by if we're there.
I've got us covered with French.
You got us covered with French.
I've got us covered with the French.
Yeah.
No problem.
My wife, she wouldn't be on the show with us, but she speaks Arabic, so maybe she could teach me.
Did she really?
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
She does. See, it's funny enough, my parents did not teach me that language because they wanted to talk about me behind my back and have me not understand it. So I know a few words. No. But what? She speaks Arabic? No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were back in Nashville last week, and on Saturday morning, I woke up and walked downstairs to the sound of my father-in-law speaking to his family in Arabic. And
it's a startling sound, I would imagine.
Here's the thing. I've heard it. I'm used to it. The first time I remember like waking up and being like, "Hey, is your dad?" Like he's never mad at anybody. Like he's like the most relaxed, wonderful guy ever. I was like, is your dad mad at whoever he's talking to? And she's like, no. Why do you think that? I'm like, I mean, it sounds like he's mad. And then like he put somebody on FaceTime to like, oh, this is Amanda's now husband, like fiance, like this is Amanda's fiance. And then he'll like the person on the other side will like say something to him before they say something to me in English. And I'm like, oh, what happened? Are they mad at me? Because it's a very fast and abrupt language. There are a couple languages where German is one of them. Yeah. Arabic is
one of them.
They're abrupt. So even when you're like, if you've learned French, I've learned Spanish. Yeah. Spanish is either really fast or really like it's musical almost. French the same way. Italian, they're very musical. But then you hear like German, Arabic, Russian, like some of these languages, even when they're saying, I love you, you're the love of my life, like I could not do this without you. If you don't know, you'd be like, they're having an argument. They're like every period is abrupt. Like, the sentence is stopped. You know it. There's no chance you're not going to.
No. Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
It's exactly like that. It is exactly like that.
Yeah.
100%.
It's funny also how when we meet people, because I mean her mom is as white as snow, like just the whitest lady ever, and then Imad's Palestinian, so but we'll be out and like we'll be on vacation and we'll meet somebody and they'll immediately your parents probably do this too. They're like, where are you from? And they're like, well, she'll be like Chicago. She's like, no. Like, where are you from?
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, okay. And then she tells them like, oh, I'm from Lebanon or I'm from Egypt or I'm wherever. And then they'll ask if she speaks Arabic. She's like, yes, I speak Arabic. And then she's like, well, I don't like want to get into it, but like,
And before you know it, you're having dinner at that person's place that night. And you're like, oh, no, I just had a full plate. Oh, okay, here, have some more.
But see, with Italians, we can kind of tell. You know, if you're in certain places, you know. But, like, if you're just out in a place like Texas where they're scattered, like not New Jersey or New York or Chicago, where they're like there's a Little Italy. Where there's not a Little Italy, you just don't know until you, like, run into somebody. And they're like, when I met Sean Stellato, the agent, Tommy Cutlett's agent, I was like, Paul Catalina. He's like, oh, hey, Val. And he hugged me. Like, that's how we know each other.
Yes.
You know, that's how we do it. It's different in other cultures, but yeah.
I mean, hey, I can absolutely relate to what your wife is going through. Unfortunately for me, you know, even if somebody is mad at me in Arabic, I would not know. So I would probably need her help with that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, your parents they would just got mad at you in English?
You know, so they would, but, like, you know, speaking of Mean Girls, we could do that 3-way phone conversation to where you don't even know, like, you know, they're on the phone and I can ask, okay, what did they say? You know, like, you know, just bring in a ringer. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, Pierre, I'll talk to you again next week, my friend. Today on the show, we've got Adam Rittenberg. We have Michael Ford, Team USA sprint coach. He